They're not good enough to start. They're not even good enough to play. But they do talk a good game. So come join Lou and Jose from the sidelines where all the best sports discussions happen anyway. Welcome in to the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Welcome into the program, everybody. I'm Lou Ruggieri. That's Jose Ortiz, and this is the Benchwarmerz podcast. Wherever, whenever, and however you happen to be listening, we appreciate taking some time out of your day to spend it with us. We're going to try and make it worth your while. We have a monumental football-laden show for you this week, a little basketball sprinkled in. You can follow us along the iHeartRadio podcasting app. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube, minus the video at the moment. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and proudly part of the Amazon podcasting lineup now, the newly formed Amazon Podcasts. You can find us there too. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Benchwarmerz Podcast for Facebook and Instagram. We're at the BW Pod on Twitter. And you can even email us at the Benchwarmerz Podcast at yahoo.com. Benchwarmerz with a Z for marketing purposes. Coming up in the second hour, we're going to talk NBA Finals. It's the Heat and the Lakers, and we're excited. We also have to look ahead to Week 4 and do some go over some bets that we had last week. But first, we have to talk Week 3, and we have coming up in a little bit our confidence-o-meter and our worryometer. And then we have Make No Mistake or Give Me a Break, our favorite new running segments. We have a stat of the week coming up. But first, Jose, we have to talk some top 5 NFL storylines according to us. And the first thing that I want to touch on is the Chiefs kind of embarrassing the Ravens in a game that we thought was going to be sort of in that epic genre of, you remember that Monday night game, the Rams-Chiefs Monday Nighter from 2 years ago, that was just the be-all, end-all of offensive performances. And this year's Chiefs-Ravens, not as exciting as I thought, actually.
Yeah, it was just an old-fashioned beatdown. The Chiefs just put their foot on the gas, and the Ravens just weren't fast enough to keep up. Patrick Mahomes is just a cheat code. I know that everyone's talking about, I'm probably not saying anything that anyone hasn't heard, but some of the throws that he was making out there against professional defenders, mind you, it's not fair. It's like the arc, the touch, the arm angle, the way he's able to move out of the pocket and create an extra second or two, or decide, hey, I'll just run and get this 4 or 5 yards, and we'll live to go 2nd and 5 or 3rd and 5. He's just so smart. He's so talented. He's so athletic. And on the other side of the ball, Lamar Jackson was clearly overmatched throughout the game. And I'm not putting this as a Lamar Jackson versus a Patrick Mahomes. I'm talking about the Chiefs' defense seemed to overwhelm Lamar Jackson, especially when they got down big. And it may have revealed kind of a deep flaw for the Ravens, where they're not really accustomed to playing from behind. And if you get a lead on them, you really could take them out of their game plan. They're just used to being able to do whatever they want to do to whoever they want to do it to. And the Chiefs weren't having it on Monday night.
Yeah, and I think, Aaron Donald gets the lion's share of the credit in terms of defensive linemen, but I will say Chris Jones is right there. I mean, he, if not for Patrick Mahomes, we might be talking a lot more about Chris Jones, because he is a force. I think him and Fletcher Cox are sort of 2 and 2A behind Aaron Donald for defensive line. And
when you look at it, they have Frank Clark as well on the defensive line. They have a great defensive line there in Kansas City. So yeah.
And Patrick Mahomes, you're right. I mean, the things that he was doing in parts of that game, where the little shovel pass he had to their fullback. Like you have McCall Hardman, you have Tyreek Hill, who are both probably the fastest and second fastest player in the league in either way you want to say it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You have Travis Kelce, who's arguably the best tight end in the game. And what do they do? They do this little goofy shovel pass to somebody that you didn't even realize was an eligible receiver.
Well, and that's the thing. That's the genius of it too, because you have a brilliant play caller in Andy Reid.
Yeah.
It's just not fair. You have this brilliant play caller. You have these amazing playmakers, How are you supposed to stop them?
Apparently you're not. I mean, the Ravens, though, I will say, Lamar Jackson is still amazing. I mean, he's so fast. He reminds me of a more accurate Michael Vick. I mean, when he takes off, and it's sort of, I had a flashback to the Michael Vick days, the old Atlanta Falcons. This game sort of reminded me of when Andy Reid's Eagles played Michael Vick's Falcons back in, the late or early 2000s. Because you look at the Ravens, I mean, that Falcons team was predicated on running backs and, short kind of dump-off passes. Remember Algie Crumpler, who was like the best tight end in the league? All of a sudden, Mark Andrews is sort of the new Algie Crumpler. I think that thunder and lightning they had with the Falcons running game. I mean, they have
Warwick Dunn. Who was it? No,
Warwick,
Warwick Dunn. Yep.
And it's just, but Andy Reid's, Donovan McNabb. I mean, obviously Donovan McNabb is not even going to come close to Patrick Mahomes, but the Eagles back then were a more talented team, I thought, from top to bottom, and it looked like that again. I kind of felt like it was a flashback to Andy Reid's earlier days, and the Chiefs are they look like they're a level above everybody else.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I will say when I looked at the Ravens and I was looking at Lamar Jackson, I was having a different comparison in my head. I wasn't thinking of Michael Vick. I was actually thinking of Colin Kaepernick. And It was more because there was at one point in time where Colin Kaepernick, his athleticism was just elevating him to a level of quarterback play that we're like, wow, how can anyone do this?
Yeah.
And then the next year, or maybe like the year after that, it felt like the NFL kind of caught up to him, and he didn't make that adjustment. And when I was watching yesterday, was a quarterback who couldn't hit wide open receivers. I mean, there were like two basically gift touchdowns that if he hits Marquise Brown where he's supposed to, maybe we're talking about a different outcome.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think that the Ravens need another good deep threat. It just feels like Marquise Brown is good. Who is it? Will Fuller, I think, is good. And then they have they're tight end based. They're tight end heavy. Mark Andrews he led the league in, I think, receiving touchdowns last year, at least for tight ends. And it just feels like they're missing something. And I'm not sure what it is. And I'm not sure. It feels like Lamar Jackson might have plateaued a bit. It seems like he's got better, but he's not taking it to that next level. And I'm not sure why.
Well, I mean, in fairness, I think this is only his. Is this his second year as a starter, or I think this is only his second year as a starter.
Willie Snead, sorry, not Will Fuller, sorry.
Oh yeah. I didn't even catch you. I didn't even notice that. But yeah, I think this is his second year as a starter, and we have to remember that not everyone's Patrick Mahomes, right? Mm-hmm. Just come out and just be amazing. And also we can chalk this up to just one bad game as well. He's played well most of the season. He played well last year. I just worry about when you get them into obvious passing situations, when they don't have the option to run, where you're not afraid of them running the ball, where you say, fine, Lamar, run for 15 yards or whatever the case may be. Yeah. I don't care. We're up 20. Like that's what I worry about him. There were points in the game last night or on Monday where they were, if they could string together a couple of big plays, they would have been right back in the game and maybe even won the game. It just felt like they didn't have another gear to go to. And the Chiefs they were up 27-10. They put it in cruise control for a little bit. And they was like, oh, we need to score again? All right, fine. Let's just go right down and score. And they did. It's just, you're right. The Chiefs are at a level by themselves. I think that the Seahawks might be approaching them in that level. We need to see more from the Seahawks defense, but so far I think the Seahawks, if we're doing power rankings, I would say Seahawks are 2.
Well, speaking of Seahawks, the Seahawks outdueled the Cowboys 38-31, and that was our next topic of discussion, number 2 in our top 5 of news of the week. I don't know what to say about this game other than it's basically what I expected it to be. I mean, Dak Prescott, he did well, but the problem that I saw, I mean, aside from the Cowboys defense just being an atrocity, the Alice Cowboys,
Yeah.
No D in Dallas. Dak Prescott, 57 attempts, 472 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 pretty crucial picks.
Yeah.
They're not gonna. You have Ezekiel Elliott. You need to be kind of pay attention to what. And I never thought I'd say this. Pay attention to what the Browns have decided to start doing. Run first to set up the pass. You don't pass to occasionally set up the run, because then you're one-dimensional and everyone knows what's coming. And even the Seahawks with, and also really bad defense.
Yeah.
They know what's coming. And Russell Wilson, once again, proved that he's on an MVP march like nothing I've ever seen. 27 of 40, 315 yards, five touchdowns.
He's got 14 touchdowns through 3 games, most in NFL history.
Yeah, and if not for a stupid, boneheaded,
that's right,
Don Beebe-esque play by DK Metcalf, where he was walking into the end zone and had the ball punched out to force a touchback, this game wouldn't even be this close. And so it's just...
the one thing I would say about running the football, they did give Zeke 14 carries, and he didn't do much with them. He had 34 yards. It felt like they were saying, we're not going to let Zeke beat us. And they did let Dak throw the ball. He threw the ball all over the place. He did have 2 critical interceptions. But I think at the end of the day, listen, I put up on offense, you put up 31 points and you lose the game. That's on your defense. And that's in my book. If you put up, if on offense I score more than 30 points and lose, it's your fault on defense.
Yeah, Zeke though only had 6 receptions for 24 yards. Where were you? If you can't run the ball, fine, but at least use him. You have to. He's one of the best players on the field. You have to use him somehow. And I don't know. I thought that the Cowboys in this game. The Cowboys did exactly. It almost felt like the old Dennis Green against the Bears back in the day. They are who we thought they were. It's kind of just like, yeah, of course the Seahawks won. I thought the Cowboys could have pulled it out, but I was not expecting them to. They had 10 penalties for 59 yards.
Yeah.
They had a fumble, lost fumble, 2 interceptions.
The other thing is that Russell Wilson can just do whatever he wants. It just felt like at any point in time, he was like, you know what, I feel like throwing a touchdown right now. Okay. It just felt like he could do anything he wanted to do at any time, and the defense had no answer. They barely pressured him, it seemed like. I don't know how many times he was sacked. I got to take a look here, but...
Yeah, with 2 minutes to go, with Russell Wilson having the ball, there was no doubt in my head. It was basically like Tom Brady back there, where you're like, well, he has 2 minutes to score a touchdown, and then... Yeah, there was no pass rush, no nothing. Dial up a blitz, something. You can't let him sit. He's sitting back there for. There was one play he sat for. It was 7 seconds or something obscene. Where you're like, well, come on, man.
His arm strength is so ridiculous too. He just puts the ball up there so high and it just hangs. And then you have 2 of the fastest receivers. They're not as fast as T.Y. Hilton. Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman, but
Well, DK Metcalf could be. If he gets his act together, he could be the second coming of Calvin Johnson. He's a freak of nature. And Tyler Lockett is crazy good. The 3 touchdowns. I don't know where the cornerback. The Cowboys were missing their starting cornerback Awuzie, who probably would have helped a little bit. Not lock down one of those 2 guys, but still. After the second touchdown, maybe you think, hey, why don't we watch out and see where Tyler Lockett is.
The one thing I would say I was disappointed with the Cowboys on offense, other than obviously the turnovers, right? If you're going to beat a team like the Seahawks, you have to play perfect, right? Yeah. You can't be turning the ball over. You can't fumble. You can't have 10 penalties. You can't do those things that beat yourself. But the other thing that was disappointing to me is I really feel like they just need to be a little bit more creative with their play calls. I was watching not to say that, there's a difference between Andy Reid and Mike McCarthy, but I was watching the Chiefs last night, and not only do they have superior offensive talent, they have such imaginative plays. How are you supposed to guard them? You don't even know you have no idea where anyone's going. You have no idea where the ball's going to. I feel like there's no imagination in the Cowboys offense right now.
I feel like a part of that is, and I know Dak threw for big numbers, but it just feels like, I hate to compare anybody to Patrick Mahomes at this point, aside from maybe Russell Wilson, but it just feels like that sort of improv ability and that calmness under pressure. Dak always looks like he's just shy of panicking in the pocket.
Yeah.
And where you have a guy like, of course I'm cherry picking, but Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, they just look like they're just back there sometimes, just in the schoolyard throwing it around.
3 best quarterbacks in the NFL so far this season. Not even close. It's Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. Maybe I should lump in Josh Allen in that group as well.
Josh Allen's making an early MVP case.
Yeah, but everyone else has kind of been a notch below those 4 guys.
The Cowboys need to be a run-first team, and it's showing very clearly. And speaking of being run-first team, our third story of the week, the Patriots, quite literally running over the competition, as you so aptly put in our show notes, they sort of embarrassed the Raiders. The Raiders were getting a lot of love.
Yeah.
Beating the Saints last week, and all of a sudden the Patriots, they go into Foxborough for the first time, by the way, since the Tuck Rule game. I don't know if
really
from 2000. No. The Raiders and the Patriots not played since that snowy Adam Vinatieri best kick.
They haven't played. They haven't played in Gillette Stadium, or haven't played at all.
They haven't played. They have not played. Bill Belichick and John, whatever his name is, I can't. I don't think of his name. Have not played since 2002.
Okay.
And so the Patriots, the Raiders come into Foxborough again. No snow this time, but they just got shellacked. I mean, Cam Newton he looked okay passing. I mean, his passing yards, not great. 162 yards, a pick, a touchdown.
You didn't have to do much, though.
Yeah. I mean, they just ran it down their throats. Sony Michel finally showed up, 9 carries for 117 yards, which, by the way, is a 13.0 yard average.
How about Flex Burkhead with 3 touchdowns? I mean, my goodness, it's like I was like, wait, is this 2012? Like, what's going on?
It was like the old Cincinnati days when he was on. He looked real good. Yeah, 7 receptions, 49 yards and a touchdown. He ran for 49 yards and scored 2 touchdowns. And it was a show. And I had a thought watching this game, and it's sort of off topic a little bit, but just in this, I don't know, in this day and age of everything that's going on with the the racial divide and in everything in the world, it sort of struck me as kind of sort of fitting in a way that sports. I feel like sports, we should all try to be more like sports in a way where it doesn't matter what color you are. If you're the best person out there, you're the one that's getting the ball. And just seeing Cam Newton as, an African-American quarterback throwing to not only Julian Edelman, who is a very white receiver, but then seeing Rex Burkhead, who is a white running back. And if you remember, white running backs, the last good white running back, I think, was Peyton Hillis, who got
up until Christian McCaffrey, of course.
Well, Christian McCaffrey, too, yeah. Correct.
Yeah. I mean, no, you're right, though.
Before this current crop of running backs.
Yeah.
It kind of struck me as kind of funny that on a team called the Patriots, we see a black quarterback throwing and handing off to white skill position players, which is sort of completely juxtaposed to, you go back to Warren Moon and they, that people wouldn't let him be a quarterback because they thought he wasn't going to be smart enough. And he had to go to the CFL. It was a nice little kind of moment where I was like, okay, at least sports is getting it right. They're just, everything's going.
Sports is the ultimate meritocracy, right? Yeah. You can't afford to be racist to be like, oh, you can't get in the game because you're black. Oh, you might lose your job if you don't win this game, right? Yeah. If you don't win the Super Bowl or whatever, beat whatever goals are set for you, you might lose your job. You can't afford to be picking and choosing based on anything other than skill. And it would be great if everything in life was based completely on your ability and your skills. But
yeah, just a little side tangent.
I just want to add one quick thing about the Patriots, and then we can move on. Early in the season, I feel like they have the best shot of challenging the Chiefs, which they play the Chiefs next week, so we'll see. But I think you have to be able to run the ball. You have to be able to run the ball. You have to hold the ball. You can't get into a shootout with the Chiefs. You can't turn the ball over. And when you run the ball a lot, you have a chance. I don't think they're going to be able to. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to stop Cam Newton in that running attack. But it just seems like they might have it together a little bit more than the Ravens did this past week. We'll see though.
Yeah, I thought that. I mean, that seemed like the pretty obvious key to success against Patrick Mahomes is that the only way he's not going to beat you is if he's sitting on the bench, and that seems like what the Patriots seem like that's what they're built for now. And I will say, the Raiders did not have a great showing, but I did kind of take away, aside from a couple big mistakes, Derek Carr looks like he's finally rounding back into sort of that 2016 form where he was sort of an MVP candidate for a little while. Between him and then Josh Jacobs is amazing. Just some of the runs that he had, he was just him and Hunter Renfrow impressed me the most in this game. Where some of the catches that Hunter Renfrow made, where he looks like he's got like a dad bod. It looks like he's playing a Thanksgiving game with just a flag football and a bunch of dudes from that are too old to play. And he made catches, and Josh Jacobs made some runs where I was like, wow, okay, the Raiders are going to be okay.
They're moving in the right direction. I like the moves that they've made. They just, they just have to stay a little healthy. They have to get a little healthier. Everyone knows they're throwing the ball at Darren Waller, so they have to get a little bit more diverse in their pass selection. And we saw that with Hunter Renfrow. Henry Ruggs was injured for this game. I'm not sure what he would have done against Gilmore anyway. And then we saw that Bryan Edwards got banged up, and they're also without Tyrell Williams, who was supposed to be their number 2 receiver this year. So they've got to get it together a little bit more in the passing game. But you're right. I like what I see from Derek Carr. We just need more from the pass catchers outside of Darren Waller.
Yeah, and Darren Waller we did see Bill Belichick in full display, because what does Bill Belichick do every time he plays a team? He takes away what you do best. And Darren Waller was he should have been listed as out for this game because he was nowhere to be found. Yep. And that was definitely by design. So another game that, speaking of, we talked about the Raiders beating the Saints last week. The Saints lost again to the Packers, and this game is number 4 on our top 5 kind of stories for the week. The Packers 3-0, 37-30, and Aaron Rodgers, when he plays well, he makes the game look so easy. And some of the throws that he can make are still just baffling. They're just ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm just wondering where was this team last year? Because they didn't add anything. We talked about this all off season, that they didn't add any help really. Yeah. And yet they look like legit contenders. And I'm just wondering, is last season's team going to show up sometime soon, or is this a new page? Have they just progressed as a group together and just naturally gotten better? Because Aaron Rodgers, 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. If it wasn't for what Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson were doing right now, we might be talking about Aaron Rodgers as the most valuable player in the NFL. So he's just, they look great. I will say the Saints defense is really troubling to me right now. They're giving up around 30 points per game, actually over 30 points per game this season. And Drew Brees, when you have Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, they can. Michael Thomas was out this past week, but when you have them both, they can kind of mask his inability to get the ball downfield. Mm-hmm. I do worry about them long term because of their defense and because of his inability to really stretch the field.
Yeah, it was interesting to see. Both of these teams are kind of almost mirrored each other in a way that was kind of spooky, because it's two older
mm-hmm.
Hall of Fame quarterbacks playing without their top wide receiver, and run heavy. Alvin Kamara is a monster, by the way.
He's so good. He's so good.
It's ridiculous.
Not even fair. Like, some of the plays he's making, like, how'd you not tackle him? How did you not tackle him there? And he just finds a way, and it's so easy he's such a smooth runner. It's like he's not even trying.
Yeah, he is. He makes it look easy, and he's deceptively fast. Like, you don't realize how fast he is until he's just pulling away from, the fastest dudes on the Packers. And Alan Lazard, by the way, made us forget all about Devontae Adams. 6 receptions, 146 yards, and a touchdown. If he can keep that up when Devontae Adams comes back, the Packers watch out, because the Packers are going to be a force.
Yeah, they look good.
They might be a real 13-year dream team this year. But, however, speaking of interesting games, the final game on our docket of top NFL storylines is sort of a surprise in a way, but the Eagles and the Bengals end up in a tie, and this game, I'm not sure what to say about that. What's wrong with Carson Wentz?
Yeah, that's my big takeaway. I don't know. I was reading somewhere that when you have a back surgery, you're never the same. Maybe he did have, I believe he had a back surgery a year ago or 2 years ago, something like that. I have no idea. Last year we could chalk it up to him not having good receivers out there. And in fairness, they still don't really have good receivers out there. Jalen Reagor's injured. Deshaun Jackson was injured early in that game. Alshon Jeffrey hasn't been on the field. Greg Ward, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is basically a bust at this point. Greg Ward is your number one receiver when he's probably not a number 4 receiver on most teams. So,
yeah.
And then Dallas Goedert left the game. It just feels like I think we maybe I'm going to not even say we. I know that I overestimated where Carson Wentz was as an NFL quarterback. We had a top 10 list early in the offseason, and I believe we both had Carson Wentz well in the top 10, not top 5, top 10. And, I don't know. I think it's time to revisit that because he's not accurate right now. He's not making the players around him better right now. And he doesn't have good enough, unlike Drew Brees, he doesn't have good enough talent to kind of mask what he's doing wrong. So it's just a complete disaster in Philadelphia right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. At 0-2-1, you can it's how different you look at teams. Like the Bengals, I look at them and I'm like, oh, well, they're not 0-3. I mean, they have probably one of the worst defenses and one of the worst offensive lines we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you look at the Eagles and you're like, wait, the Eagles don't have a win yet? And it's just funny how perspective changes things. And yeah, Carson Wentz, you're right. He did not play well. He was 29 of 47, 225 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. He ran for 65 yards, which I thought was interesting. Miles Sanders, the lone bright spot for the Eagles, 95 yards, no touchdowns though, but 5 yards a carry, pretty good.
Yeah, it's good.
The Eagles, honestly though, with the Cowboys sort of being the Cowboys, I'm mark my words, that 0-2-1, that one might be the difference in this. This division might be the first one since the Saints to have a losing record win the division. And I could very easily see this division going, the 8-8 for the Cowboys and then 7-9-1 for the Eagles or something ridiculous where that little one tie comes in as I
still put the Cowboys well ahead. I don't think there was any crime in losing to the Seahawks last week. I still put the Cowboys well ahead of the Eagles at this point.
We'll see. I don't know. I'm
as far as the Bengals, there's no expectations, right? They didn't make the playoffs last year. No one's expecting them to make the playoffs this year. This is kind of like an exploratory year. How good is T. Higgins? How good is Joe Burrow? How good are the pieces together? Is AJ Green going to get another contract? Which it seems like the answer is no. This is basically just a free year for them. The pressure might go up next season. We'll see.
Yep, I agree. But all right, so that'll do it for the top 5 NFL storylines this week. We have to take a break, and we're going to come right back, and we're going to do our confidence meter and our worryometer, and then we have a stat of the week coming up with along with our new favorite segment, Make No Mistake or Give Me a Break. So we'll have that and some more right after this on the Benchwarmerz podcast.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benchwarmers podcast, where being all talk is actually a good thing. Now, back to the action. Or talk, I guess.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. I'm Lou Ruggieri, that's Jose Ortiz, and this is still the Benchwarmers podcast. Appreciate you taking a little time to spend it with us. We touched on some NFL, the top storylines in the week 3 of football that we saw this past week. And coming up in a little while, we're going to look ahead to week 4. We have Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is, our betting advice, or you can take it as advice by not following our advice. NBA, we are going to touch on some non-football news in the NBA. The finals are coming up, and we're very excited about that. But right now, Jose, I want to talk a little about some 3-0 teams and some 0-3 teams, and our confidence meter. I don't know how to confidential meter or worryometer makes sense. Confidence.
The confidence meter is fine.
All right.
Or confidence test.
Confidence meter and worryometer. So there's a couple teams that are 3-0, and those teams are the Bills, Steelers, Titans, Seahawks, Packers, Bears, and Chiefs. And I'd like to know, out of that group, outside of the Chiefs, I'm taking the Chiefs off the table, what team are you most confident in being 3-0 right now? So Bills, Steelers, Titans, Seahawks, Packers, Bears.
Yeah, well, just so you know that I went from 0 to 10. I did a little actual meter for myself.
Oh, nice.
And I had the Chiefs at 10, just maximum confidence. And to illustrate the gap, I think, between them and everyone else, I put the Seahawks at an 8, which is my next highest confidence. I think they're the best team in the NFC, but their defense is suspect. Russell Wilson is good enough to overcome almost anything. They're almost guaranteed. He's never missed the playoffs, I don't think, in his entire career. Or I think maybe 1 year. So they're almost a lock for the playoffs. It's just a matter of, can their defense come up with timely stops and turnovers in big games. So we'll see. But I have an 8 out of 10.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you there. I think the Seahawks are probably the most confidence-inspiring outside of the Chiefs. The Steelers are sneaky good, and I think their defense is pretty good to begin with. In terms, that they have Minkah Fitzpatrick, who they got last year for a first-round pick from the Dolphins. They have T.J. Watt, who is just a monster. I mean, he is just incredible. And if that offense starts clicking, and if Ben can stay reasonably healthy, and that offense starts clicking between Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, Eric Ebron is a sleeper tight end. He's got real talent. We saw him with Andrew Luck when he had a real, kind of a real offensive system to work with, aside from Matt Stafford. He can blow up. And so, James Conner and Snell as a backfield, I mean, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
The Steelers are sneaky good, and I think I want to say the Bills, but I can't go with the Bills until I see them play the Patriots.
Well, I have the Steelers, just so you know, I have the Bills and the Steelers tied at 7 as my confidence meter, and I have basically the same thought with all three of both those teams. I need to see them beat a really good team. I need to see them go on the road, like go to Foxborough, get a win, go to Arrowhead and get a win, I don't know where the Ravens play, but go to Baltimore and get a win. That's what I kind of need to see from the Steelers, and we'll get the opportunity with the Steelers because they're in the same division with the Ravens, and same thing with the Bills. We need to see them win a big game, and then we can kind of bump up their confidence level at this point.
Yeah, I think the Packers look good too, but I'm still, that Jordan Love pick it just sticks.
Well, when's Mr. Hyde going to turn his head? I said it's Jekyll and Hyde, right? Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Last year was not a terrible team, but a hollow 13-3 team.
Yeah.
Is that the reality, or is this the reality? Because nothing has changed.
Watching Aaron Rodgers, well, it's a second year under Matt LaFleur, so I mean, It is, Aaron Rodgers is sort of an old dog, and teaching him new tricks isn't easy. So maybe it took him a year to kind of get through it and see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I couldn't help but think, watching that game, as good as Aaron Rodgers is, imagine if instead of Marquez Valdez-Scantling or Alan Lazard, they had Justin Jefferson, or they had Jerry Judy, or they had Chase Claypool, or they had even Michael Pittman, T. Higgins, any of those guys that they could have gotten, CeeDee Lamb. I mean, anybody else on that field with some real talent, I wonder how much better the Packers could be. Maybe they make Jordan Love a receiver. I mean, I don't know what to do with him. Or
maybe they just believed in Alan Lazard. It could just be that. It could be as simple as that. I mean, you just said he did his best Devontae Adams performance. Impersonation. He looked great against the Saints on Sunday night. So maybe they just believed in Alan Lazard.
But even if they did, I mean, if you look at that team objectively, wide receiver was a weakness, and quarterback backup quarterback was not. so it's hard to justify. But regardless, I mean, that's the Packers. I'm kind of on the fence about, and the Bears. Wow, I don't even know what to say about the Bears. I mean, we can talk about the Bears more when we get to the worryometer. And when we talk,
the Bears are 3-0. I mean, all my confidence meter, I have them at a 3 out of 10. Because really? Listen, switching quarterbacks in week 3 is almost never good, right? It's most of the time it's not a good thing, and especially when it's not because of injury. It's just like you're not playing well, so that's not usually a good sign. And then let's look at the teams they beat. They beat the Lions, they beat the Giants, and they beat the Falcons. Certainly not a murderer's row of NFL teams right now. I don't listen. 3-0 is 3-0, but I don't have a lot of confidence that they're going to turn that into a playoff run. And
the Bears look good, and Nick Foles. I mean, I have to say, on a day where the Phillies get eliminated from the playoffs, the Eagles tie with the Bengals, and then Nick Foles leads a monumental comeback game. It was not a good day to be a Philly fan, and Foles. I mean, Foles. He's still got something. I don't know what it is, but he's got something.
He's got that magic.
3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, and wow, I mean, it's impressive.
What are your thoughts on our last 3-0 team, the Titans? We didn't talk about them. Where's your confidence level on them?
The Titans, the Titans are probably a 5. I mean, I think they're sort of that. They're the litmus test because they're good. They're not great. They do everything pretty well. Jadeveon Clowney looks like he's a good addition to that defensive line. Derrick Henry is, I mean, they're a run-first play-action team. I mean, their receivers aren't great. Ryan Tannehill's playing better, so I have to give him credit. Derrick Henry is a monster.
Yeah, he's not fair how big he is. It's just not. No one should.
I don't understand how you tackle a guy like that. He's 6'2", 6'1", and he's 250 pounds. Like,
and he runs like a 4.5 40. I'm running out of the way if he's running at me.
Yeah, that's one of those business decisions where you just nope.
Well, I actually have the Titans. I ranked I have them as a 4 out of 10. This is what I looked at. All those things notwithstanding, you made a lot of great points about them. They beat the Broncos, the Jaguars, and the Vikings by a combined 6 points.
Yeah.
So I don't want to listen. Beating an NFL team is beating an NFL team, but it feels like they're just hanging on for dear life in these games, and a bounce the wrong way, they could be 0-3. So I don't really have a lot of confidence in them.
Yeah, that's fair. And speaking of not having any confidence, we're going to move on to the worryometer, and we're going to talk the 0-3 teams. And so these, if you'd like to give some rankings, so the Vikings, Giants, Jets, Denver, Houston, and the Atlanta Falcons are 0-3. And let me ask you this: which one of these teams seems like the best 0-3 team, and which one seems like the worst 0-3 team? Because I have two answers right off. I mean, I think it's an easy answer.
I agree. The best 0-3 team to me is the Houston Texans. They played 3 great teams in Kansas City, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh. And they have 2 get-right games coming up against the Vikings and the Jaguars before facing a questionable Tennessee team in Week 6. To me, it's easily the Houston Texans. They just happen to get off to a bad start because of playing a tough team in the worst team in the NFL, which if you've been listening to the show, you already know what I think. It's the Jets. Full out panic mode. This team is almost completely void of talent. Like, I don't even know who the good players on the team are because they don't have any good players.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know.
There's an offensive lineman I think that they drafted maybe that I'm forgetting about. But, like, as far as skill position players, they have no one.
Braylon Edwards maybe, or Santonio Holmes.
Oh, you're going Braylon Edwards.
Joe Namath.
Go Keyshawn Johnson or freaking Wayne Corbett.
Curtis Martin.
Yeah. Well, they better go back into their history because it looks bad. Honestly, I would not be surprised if by the next time we record, Adam Gase is fired.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think that between him and Dan Quinn, it's like dead man walking. Like
at least Dan Quinn has the Super Bowl appearance in his pocket,
Yeah, I mean, Adam Gase is definitely on the hotter seat, and I think that the Jets, I agree, are the worst 0-3 team. I actually think that the Falcons are the best 0-3 team, and I know that's hard to say, but if not for just the most boneheaded, dumbfounding, they had a 99.9 chance of winning that Cowboys game. 99.9. Like, they were a lock to win that game, and because they just froze up and just made stupid isn't even the word. I mean, ridiculous mistake on special teams. They ended up losing to the Cowboys. And then to the Bears, I mean, we've seen other guys lose to the Nick Foles magic when it shows up, and better teams, Tom Brady most notably. So I think that the Falcons offensively are a monster. I mean, they're a juggernaut between Hayden Hurst. Julio Jones hasn't even been playing well, and Calvin Ridley looks like Julio Jones.
Yeah, the next Julio Jones. It's like when, I can't remember the receiver that Julio Jones came in with, who was like the preeminent receiver at that time. Why can't I remember his name?
He was a high school wrestling champion.
I'm going to have to look it up right now.
Mohamed Sanu was there for a while. It was... Oh, God.
It's going to show up. It's Roddy White. Roddy White.
Yep.
I just couldn't remember his name. It's kind of like that. Roddy White was the alpha dog for a few years. Julio Jones came in and just quickly took over as the best receiver. Yeah. So I think that's kind of what's happening. The Falcons, I don't know. I feel like there's a losing culture building in that organization right now. I know that we just said that they went to the Super Bowl a few years ago, but I don't know. It just feels like they find ways to lose games, as you pointed out. They have one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Actually, they have the worst defense in the NFL. You can't win when you're giving up 36 points a game. It's just not going to happen, and that's really what I'm looking at. So.
And speaking of the Falcons, that leads me to our stat of the week, courtesy of the Elias Sports Bureau. The Falcons are the first team in NFL history to lose twice in one season while holding a 15-point lead in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. To me, that's just, you're finding ways to lose games that you should be winning. And that's how you have a team go 2-14 or 3-13, which surprisingly seems like they might be headed for that. But
it almost feels like they have kind of that inferiority complex that the only team that comes to mind are like the Bills of the 90s, that fourth Super Bowl. And it always kind of was interesting to me. Troy Aikman talking about that Super Bowl, he said that in the first half, the Bills were kicking the snot out of the Cowboys. And he's like, they just looked, after having lost 3 in a row, it felt like they just kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. And it sort of became this self-fulfilling prophecy where they almost didn't think that they were good enough to win, even though they were winning. And so I wonder if the Falcons might be on that same trajectory where it's just like, all right, well, what's it going to be this week? We can't. We're up to 30 points, but obviously we're not going to win. We don't know how we're not going to win, but we're not going to win somehow. So, I think that might be, and it might be Dan Quinn. It might be just something from that's a culture thing that you have to change and shake up. So,
yeah.
But that leads us. Let's move on. We have to get to our make no mistake or give me a break. This is my favorite new segment that we do, and it's sort of it's just basically a true false segment, and with a clever name that isn't even that clever. But Jose, I'm going to we could alternate if you want. I can throw these out at you. You can throw some out at me. But
you start. We'll just do yours first, and then I have a few that I can tack on at the end.
Okay. So these are statements that we can make after the weekends in football, and it's sort of make no mistake, like it's a foregone conclusion, or give me a break, get real, get it together and think clearly. So. Make no mistake, or give me a break. The Packers are a real Super Bowl contender this year.
That's a make no mistake. You're 3-0. Aaron Rodgers is playing almost flawless football. Their defense is playing defense decently. They just beat a pretty good team, I think, anyway, in the Saints. So there's no reason to me that they shouldn't be right in the mix there.
I agree. Make no mistake, or give me a break. Russell Wilson will set the passing touchdown record this year. And just as an extra little bit of information. Russell Wilson now holds the all-time record for most touchdown passes thrown through the first 3 games in a season at 14. He actually just beat the previous holder of that was Patrick Mahomes when he threw 50 touchdowns. He was at 13 in 2018.
Well, I think Russell Wilson's on pace for like 75 touchdowns or something ridiculous right now. I would still say give me a break. I just think, not to say that he can't do it. I feel like at some point Pete Carroll's going to, call more runs or something like that. It's just hard I can't imagine him keeping up this pace. It just seems like at some point we'll have to rely on the run a little bit more. There'll be a stretch of games where Russell Wilson won't throw 5 touchdowns a game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm hesitant because I feel like there's a chance I might be eating my words at the end of the year, but I'm going to say give me a break just because teams are going to have to. I mean, you have to start game planning and just let them run the ball and just focus all of your efforts on stopping the pass. I mean, he's throwing 5 touchdowns a game. Like, come on, that's crazy. And you have to, as a defensive coordinator, I don't know how you don't say, okay, let them run whatever they're going to run. We have to stop him from throwing the ball. And so I feel like the defenses are going to tighten up a little bit, and I think Russell Wilson's insane trajectory is going to come down a little bit this year. Okay, make no mistake, or give me a break. Cam Newton will be a high-value MVP candidate this year. I guess anybody could be an MVP candidate, but Cam Newton will be a legitimate MVP candidate this year.
I'm going to say give me a break. I just don't think he's going to put up the numbers necessary to really compete. He's not going to be put up more numbers on the ground than say Lamar Jackson, and he's certainly not going to put up enough air yards or touchdowns to get that. I think Bill Belichick's going to win the MVP on that team. That's basically what's happening to me. But
I couldn't agree more. All right, make no mistake or give me a break. The Buffalo Bills are a legitimate Super Bowl contender in the AFC.
I feel bad disrespecting them, but I'm going to say give me a break. We just talked about our confidence, and then we haven't seen them really beat an elite team. Not to say the Rams, they just beat the Rams barely, and that's fine. But they just beat the Rams, and I guess the Rams were a good team. But I haven't really been overly, and I've been impressed with their play. I haven't been impressed with the teams they've beaten. So I'm going to say it's a wait and see. So at this point, give me a break.
I think I'm going to disagree with you there because the Bills, I think the Bills are for real. I think they're a legit team, and I think that they have a real chance to make some noise. And they did, they lost in the wild card last year to the Texans, but it was 19-22, and I think that they're going to win that division. And again, I feel like mentally, if they could get over that hump of beating the Patriots and beat them convincingly, like not a fluke, not a crazy, not because right now the Bills and the Patriots are kind of strangely mirrors of one another. Because I think Cam Newton and Josh Allen are almost carbon copies of one another. Josh Allen being much younger at this point and less beat up, but I think physically they're about the same size. They both have big arms. They're not the most accurate. They're incredibly dangerous with their legs, and they make some chronically poor decisions. But it's a defense first team with kind of an interesting wide receiver cast that isn't really peppered with too many all-stars. I mean, Stephon Diggs being there now changes that a little bit. But I think the Bills, if they could get over, so I'm going to say make no mistake, with the caveat that as long as they at least beat the Patriots convincingly once, the Bills can be a Super Bowl contender. But, okay.
Yeah, I just don't think they're going to beat the Patriots convincingly. So
fair enough. All right, make the mistake or give me a break. The Steelers, not the Ravens, will win the AFC North this year.
Well, you stole one of mine. Yeah, that's okay. It happens. That means we're on the same page. I'm going to say that's a tough one. I'm going to say give me a break. I think that the Ravens are good. They look bad against the Chiefs, but the Chiefs make a lot of teams look bad. I think the Ravens are going to get things back together, and they'll end up being the best team in that division.
I agree. Yep. All right, finally, I have one more for you.
Okay.
A New York-based football team will have the number 1 overall pick in the 2021 draft this year.
Oh, that's easy. That's make no mistake. The Jets are ticketed for the number 1 overall pick. Although I guess the Giants, they have their hat in the ring as well. So there's almost no way that Trevor Lawrence is not going to be in New York next season. So
I agree, and I think it's going. I feel bad because it's probably going to be the Jets, and I kind of feel bad. Sam Darnold is going to get Josh Allen.
Josh Rosen.
Josh Rosen, sorry, not Josh Allen. We were talking about the Bills before. Josh Rosen.
Yeah.
And it might be the best thing that ever happened to Sam Darnold if that happens, but
I don't know. I think it's unfair to make that comparison. We've talked about this before. Josh Rosen was barely given a shot. Sam Darnold's gotten 3 seasons. This is his 3rd season as the full-time starter. I know he had mono last year.
And he's got Adam Gase this year. So I mean, I don't know. That's a pretty bad malady to deal with.
I think of a nickname for him, for Adam Gase. He's just he's like the Voldemort of the NFL or something like that. It's just no. That's too much. I gotta think of something better than that. He's just bad.
I mean, the Giants too. Daniel Jones. I was watching that game, and Daniel Jones is good, but I'm not sure. I feel like his ceiling is somewhat limited, and I don't think. I don't know if the Giants have the number 1 pick. I understand how they would probably try to leverage that into multiple picks and trade out of it, but I don't know if that's the best idea because it just seems like Daniel Jones he can't do what Trevor Lawrence would be able to do.
Well, in fairness, I don't want to. I mean, it's what we think Trevor Lawrence should be able to do on the next level. But the one thing I will say about the Giants, I think if you look at them just from an honest roster evaluation standpoint, if you remove Saquon Barkley and from that team, and I'm talking premium Saquon Barkley, not what we saw earlier this year, they don't really have a ton of great offensive talent. Darius Slayton is probably their number 1 receiver. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but he's probably a number 3 receiver on most good teams. Yeah. Golden Tate might not even make a bunch of other teams in the NFL. Sterling Shepard's been injured. Same thing with Evan Ingram, who's supposed to be this great tight end. It just feels like they don't really have a ton of offensive talent around Daniel Jones, and he's not the type of quarterback that's just going to take a guy off the street and make them better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Devontae.
To sign Devonta Freeman. I mean, come
Freeman.
On.
That's it. Yeah.
All right, so I've got a couple here for you. This is a tough one here. The New Orleans Saints will miss the playoffs. Now, before you answer, I just want to let you know that right now, if the playoffs were starting today, which they are not, they would not be in the postseason.
I hate to be hot takey, but I think that might be a make no mistake. I'm not sure. I mean, Drew Brees looks sort of suspect, and if he doesn't have that 5-game gap where he had last year to kind of rejuvenate and get his arm kind of under him, I feel like he's kind of done. He has a job lined up, I think, with ABC or NBC next year. So I feel like he's almost moving on regardless. If Michael Thomas doesn't come back, that team is doomed. I mean, if Michael Thomas stays hurt, there's no chance that they make the playoffs.
Yeah, I would say make no mistake as well. To me, it's more about how I mean, as great as Alvin Kamara is, right? Because Michael Thomas is probably out for another week or 2 at least, right? Yeah. With a high ankle sprain. How much can you rely on Alvin Kamara to, there was a 5-yard screen pass. It took 50 yards, bouncing off of 4 or 5 guys. He's amazing, but you can't rely on a guy taking a short pass to the house every single time. And I think that's masking some of his deficiencies right now, and eventually it's going to catch up. So, yeah. All right. Picking on the New York teams here, I feel bad, but the New York Knicks will win a game before the New York Jets. Just to let you know, the NBA season starts December 1st.
Oh, that's a good one. Wow. December 1st. So that means the Jets have to go through. I'm going to say give me a break. Because I think that the football gods will let the Jets just kind of trip over themselves into a win somehow and sort of backdoor a win into some. I'd have to look at their schedule, but I think that they're going to win one.
Yeah, it's more because the Knicks are not a very good team, so I'm not expecting them to
Also, that
start off 1-0 or something like that. So I would say give me a break because you would have to imagine that the Jets can win at least 1 or 2 games this season. But
yep, they might beat the Broncos this week coming up on Thursday Night Football.
There's no chance that happens in my mind, but we'll see. Maybe I'm overestimating, and maybe the Broncos become the Trevor Lawrence leader. So,
Yeah.
All right, last one here.
Yep.
Jalen Hurts will start a game for the Philadelphia Eagles before the end of this season.
I'm going to say make no mistake. I think that Carson Wentz's injury history plus his poor play, is not he's going to try too hard. He ran for 65 yards this last week, and he's not, he's made of glass. We've seen him kind of break very easily. And I've been saying this for a while now, and I'll say it again just so it's on record. I think that if I were the Eagles, given their wide receiver woes, I would take a look at what the Saints have done with Taysom Hill with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts might be the fastest guy on that team right now. He's a 4.5 40 guy. Like he's an athlete among athletes, and I think that if he has even remotely decent hands, they should be putting him at slot. They should be using trick plays with him. They should be doing anything they can to get an athletic guy, a young guy on the field and get him some reps because you never know when you're going to need him. And I think that if Carson Wentz keeps playing the way he is, we're going to see Jalen Hurts a lot sooner than we thought.
So I'm going to disagree here. I'm going to say give me a break. And I definitely, all the things you said in your narrative make a lot of sense there. I'm just going to trust that Carson Wentz hasn't forgotten how to play football. And I'm going to trust that being
his body not to remember how to get hurt.
Yeah. Well, I never anticipate a person getting hurt. So I'm anticipating first of all, the other thing I realized as I was looking at this, Jalen Hurts is technically the number 3 quarterback on the team. So it's, I don't remember who something like Nate Suddenfeld or something like that. Is the number 2 quarterback. I just feel like he can't, he could get injured, but barring the injury, he can't be just done. I think that would just be weird, just to have a quarterback in his prime just fall off of a cliff. I'm just going to have to say that he's had a few bad games, and he's going to right the ship eventually.
Yeah, I don't think that Jalen Hurts is going to become the full-time starter, but I could see them benching Wentz as sort of a slap on the wrist, kind of like we saw with Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky, and just say, hey, get it together or you're done, man. It's sort of a kind of a shot across the bow and just kind of light a spark under him. I could see that happening for sure.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a fair point. I'm not confident in my give me a break there. So that's all I have.
All right, good. And that's all we have for this hour of the show. So we're going to wrap this up. We're going to come back in a little bit. We have to look ahead to week 4 in the NFL. We have to kind of go through our betting semi-segment and put your money where your mouth is, where we kind of recap our sports bets now that it's mostly legal. But coming up next, we're going to switch gears, talk a little NBA because, hey, it's the end of September and it's the NBA Finals. So what better time to talk NBA than almost October? So stick around, and we're going to come right back on the Benchwarmers podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Benchwarmers podcast. Follow along with us on the Benchwarmers podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to review us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.